Blake, how do you feel about being banned from Florida?
Toby, nothing will keep me from the beach, you vile Cretan.
Welcome to the ChurchGear podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who is only taking 2 trips out of state this year, and both are to Florida. And I'm here with my co-host, who is only one wife away from moving to Florida, Toby Walters.
My wife would gladly move to Florida. It's kids. And also, we want to be in Florida in the nice months. So, we want to show up basically November 1st and then head back out May 1st.
You need to move it up just a little bit. May and September, it's perfectly hot and nobody's there yet.
That's a good point. And also, what's a Cretan? A creature?
I had creature, but then something in my Latin days in high school was say Cretan, and I was like, okay, I'll do it.
I don't know about that. There is Cretan or there's creature.
What did I say?
Cretan? Well, I don't think it's a word.
You just look like a Cretan.
Yeah. So anyways, I was recently, Toger and I went to Infocom down in the Orlando area. But then, Blake, we also hosted The Mix at First Orlando, which was a ton of fun.
The Mix.
Does it have a jingle now?
It should.
That
one's short enough.
Come meet all your friends at The Mix. Something like that.
Too much. Needs to be shorter.
So I can't even tell you how many times people were like, well, where's Blake?
I had people texting me and I was pretty pissed off. I said, give Toby hell, because I wish I was there right now.
Now, how many events or trips did I invite you on this year, but then you backed out because you're like, I have too much work to do?
Toby, I stopped working after Philo, all right? I'm available now. I am single and ready to mingle when it comes to marrying travel plans. That's why you're taking me to Texas in August.
I thought you were going to say you're single and ready to mingle when it comes to church production leaders.
Well, I'm always ready to mingle with my church people.
So for those
Christians.
people that actually did come to Florida this time and didn't have too much work to do, it was a ton of fun. So Toger said he counted and he kind of lost track after just over 100. So probably about 110 people there.
That were asking about me? That's amazing.
No, I think there was one and he was like, oh, thank God.
Matt and Lepke and someone else.
Sure. Me. And someone else. Yes. That's what you always say. And someone else. But so we all gathered. We served them, as you like to call, the Lord's chicken.
Yes.
We got some chicken minis for breakfast, and then we divided up to 2 different tours. So Bobby and Alex and the team, so Bobby took broadcast, and so half the group went and saw the inner workings of the broadcast system at first. And I mean, Bobby's brilliant at what he does. And so he got to talk about his systems and show everything off. And then Alex was at front of house. So everybody got to hear some tracks from Sunday as Alex mixed and got to crank it up. So it was really fun to, see how First does everything. And then we kind of had a Q&A session at the end. And it was great because, as we always do with the Mix, we get our friends to help us sponsor it. And so Digico, D&B, Thor, and Resi all were sponsors, but Resi left after 3 minutes.
That sounds like a Toby Irish goodbye at a party.
Yeah. They said apparently our booth is burning down at Infocom. We have to go fix it.
Also, I haven't listened to a word you said since chicken minis. I mean, those things are better than cocaine. I've never done cocaine, but I bet they're better than cocaine.
Yeah, I've never done cocaine either, but I feel there's got to be something there. I know there are a lot of negative side effects, but there's no negative side effects of the Mix.
What if we did just a smidge of cocaine right before an episode?
That's what Coca-Cola used to be.
What?
Coca-Cola used to have cocaine in it, just a smidge, until it became illegal.
Well, now I really want to hear an interview with someone that had that, Yeah.
And one funny thing about the Mix, so I was trying to give all the sponsors an opportunity to share about their systems, because we specifically invite the sponsors who have gear at the church where we're hosting it at. And so there's a big D&B PA, but it's about 15 years old at this point. And so I wanted to ask Zach a question. And so apparently Zach is having a conversation with somebody, and Zach is saying, gosh, I sure hope Toby doesn't ask me about this. And then I say, hey, Zach, can you tell us what you would do in this auditorium today? So it's so funny. It was the person talking to him said it was basically like a cartoon moment. And then he was totally put on the spot. But he recovered decently, talking about array processing and other fancy things I don't understand.
He could have used his DeLorean to go back in time and prepare for that answer, but he got rid of it.
I know. Now he can't.
Who is Zach Brady without a DeLorean?
I know. He can't even go back in time to get back his DeLorean so he can then go back in time.
He's a Jeep guy now, but I mean...
Nobody cares about Jeep guys.
We should start a petition.
We should.
That he has to get his DeLorean back. And if we had that DeLorean, we would go back in time and warn today's guest to not join the podcast because it's a bunch of tomfoolery. The only person that we know that has ever had a little bit of cocaine mixed in his Coke, a consultant and mix engineer, Mark Carlberg. Mark, are you indeed a consultant? And how did that cocaine hit you in the Coca-Cola?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. So I prefer not to do straight cocaine. I prefer to actually use Adderall. That helps make it legal.
Yeah. Perfect.
Also, Mark, our tech is all weird today, so you're on the screen to the right, but for me to look like I'm looking at you on video, I'm just looking off to this way, so I'm speaking at a wall right now.
I mean, Blake, do you remember how they referred to Dr. Evil in Austin Powers?
Yeah, they called him a cretin.
And no, they called him a lazy-eyed psycho, which is how I often refer to you. So this actually really fits. Your eyes up there and your mouth is down here. Lazy-eyed psycho.
All right. But you know who's not a lazy-eyed psycho? just an Adderall user is Mark. So, Mark, you've been around production for a little bit now. I mean, you're only 17, but give us a snapshot of your background in church production and how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a small history since I'm only 17, but I began in church like most of you guys. Started as a musician, as a drummer, and kind of worked my way up the ladder. Saw there was needs for a bass player at one point, and an acoustic player, and media lyric operator, whatever you call it these days. And I was working Costco management. I made a transition after several years there and shifted because I knew that I wanted to do audio and mixing, and went and got a music degree from a school in Indianapolis. And I kind of cut my teeth there for 4 years while I was getting a bachelor's, and was doing weekend church gigs, was doing college tours, was doing consulting on a very small level while I was schooling. I had gone there intentionally because I knew of a teacher there that was teaching production, and he's honestly one of my best friends now. His name's Vito, and he really poured into me during those 4 years, and we have been doing large events and conferences, trainings together for quite a while. Post school, I went and became an audio director full-time at a church in Maryville, Tennessee. Was there for a couple of years, and then I ended up quitting and going full-time into my consulting and mixing freelance work. So that's kind of where I am today. Just a quick summary for you guys. So
thank you for that quick snapshot. Yeah. Toby, this guy left a Costco management job for church production. I mean, that must have been a gargantuan drop in pay. I can't believe he did that.
And also, he's the one church tech we've had on this podcast that actually went to college. So
that's true.
I know. You would think he's pretty smart. And also, our guests don't know this unless they've been... our listeners don't know this unless they've been a guest on the ChurchGear podcast. We coach our guests on giving us a, short and punchy background.
Good snapshot.
Mark nailed it.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Well done, 17-year-old Mark.
If only I could go back in time.
Yeah. So Mark, is there...
what's funny though, I was going to say is because you were talking about shifting over from Costco is... because there was obviously a huge drop in money resources coming in. But my brother told me at one point, he's like, do you want to do something you love and make less, or do you want to do something you hate and make more? And so based on that, I made that decision to shift over and go back to school.
What am I doing here,
Toby? I'm doing something I hate and I'm making nothing. I mean, bad career decisions.
I still remember, so I very early on, I think I was 18 or 19 years old, and I was a server at a restaurant, just part-time, and then I got a job as a part-time youth pastor. And I remember one of the teenage girls in the youth group just looks at me one day. She says, "You don't care anything about us. You're just doing this for the money."
What did you say?
I said, "Girl, do you have any idea that I made more money as a part-time server than I did as your youth pastor?"
I bet you would have been a fun server. Why did you leave that?
Oh, I was so good at being a server.
Why did you leave that?
crushed it. I felt a call to ministry, dude.
God has never called my number, apparently.
No, for real good reason. So, Mark, is there, I feel like you were alluding to, there was a story about how you got started mixing audio in church.
Yeah, I like to bring it up when I go to churches and do clinics and trainings and just kind of, pour into the team, but it gives people a really quick idea of like how I got wrapped up into this whole thing. And really it started when I was about 18 years old, which I know that I'm supposed to be 17, but this was actually about...
It's all good. You use Zach Brady's DeLorean. You're fine. You're actually the guy who bought it off him.
I wish, man. I'm sad that he sold that thing.
Yeah.
But about 13 years ago, Easter Sunday, it was the night before Easter. We had gotten the X32 right when it came out, and I was trying to figure out how to work this audio console. I never used it before, and I accidentally deleted the show file about 10 p.m. the night before Easter Sunday.
Yes.
How could you?
So obviously I freaked out. I was looking for backup show files on a flash drive on the computer, calling the old sound guy that had just left the church a couple weeks prior, and couldn't do it. So I had to build it from scratch. Luckily, I had just made a contact with a friend of mine now, Tim Fisher, who worked at Guitar Center randomly, and I had his contact information. He was working a bar gig downtown Minneapolis, and in between sets, he would call me back and walk me through setting up the show file. And by about 8 a.m., everything was good to go for the rehearsal. It wasn't like amazing, but it was working, and I was proud of that because I had to get TeamViewer set up for him to remote into the console. I had zero information on this. What's that guy's name that makes X32 videos? Drew Brashler.
Yeah.
His videos weren't out yet.
Oh.
So I had nothing to really go on at that point. And so I brought him in after that and really dove deep into the X32 and into sound. And that kind of is where I got passionate because I saw it as a big need. Obviously I did that for myself, but there was no one else doing it at that time. And so I kind of just stepped in because there was a need.
How much sleep did you get that night?
Zero. Zero. I stayed up. It wasn't a possibility because it would have been a complete fail for Sunday, and I wasn't going to have that on my resume.
So if you're, running the audio for the first time, was there not somebody else at the church, or were you just left to figure it out yourself?
Yeah, there was a worship leader, and I think at that point it was only a worship leader that had known anything about that console up to that point, and he really was not trying to be involved. He was, singing and leading and stuff, and so it was really on me because the old sound guy had left. There was no systems, there was no team. It was zero.
This sounds very familiar, Toby. The worship leader loses their person. They get a new person. They don't care to help them. We recently just hired someone on the marketing team. We lost our old person. I don't give a crap. She's like, hey, can you help me? I'm like, I cannot. You're best of luck. So I understand, the situation his worship leader was in.
Yeah. I mean, you and I hire a content person to film and edit the podcast, and it's not like we can help offer wisdom and advice because we don't know how to do it.
I remember freaking the candidates out in the interview search because I was like, I cannot help you.
Yeah.
No, for real. You are on your own.
Yeah. And I also want to point out that, when I was your age, Mark, and if something like that happened, it would have been fine because I had an analog console. We didn't have digital back in my day.
Mark, also, how long had you been in this job when this disaster struck you?
So this was actually when I was volunteering at the church. I was still working at Costco at the time. And because this was when I was 18, and I up to that point had been playing drums, bass, kind of filling in wherever needed. And I had just recently started getting with the previous audio guy to learn what this X32 was. I couldn't understand because we were on the old 24.4.
A classic.
Yeah, the Mackie.
The Mackie, yeah. And I couldn't understand layers. I couldn't understand how one channel could be multiple things. So he was teaching me through that stuff. It was a good time.
I wonder how many volunteers have done a 24-hour production day.
That's a scary thought.
That's incredible.
I also wanted this story to be, Mark, that, you were, for the first time you're going to do audio, you deleted the show file and you're like, well, moving to Indiana. It's just like, I'm out.
Yeah, that was my last service there.
Yeah. So, Mark, I'm sure you've seen a lot of volunteers come up, under you or in churches that you are consulting at. And I think origin stories start to have sort of repeatable themes. So what are some of the consistent themes you see for new volunteers being spotted and raised up in church and then having success?
I can really only speak, it's a multi-tiered question, and I can only speak from my experience with it. When I first got the position at the church in Maryville as an audio director, I came in with one guy on the volunteer team that was mixing the whole service. And not only that, he was mixing front of house, he was mixing in-ears for 25 people and mixing broadcasts from the same console. So it was a very stressful position to be in if you were that one person. And so I had to come in with kind of a very clear vision of what I wanted to establish to kind of set this up for success. Otherwise, I would have just burned. And so what I came in with a set of core values, a mission statement, and roles and responsibility for each position that I wanted to see in that department. And from there, I established conversations with the leadership team to find out who had musical abilities in the audience. People that might be interested from the music team and worship teams, from the students. We have a school at our church, and so there's a student-driven ministry that they have their own setup and everything. And then also coordinating with people independently. So just having conversations with, just casual conversations, not anything directly. And I was able, between those three different ways, find 10 people over a course of 1 year for the audio team. So we went from one person to 10 people in 1 year. And I kind of knew that I was going to have to bury my head and just get to work. Kind of being in Costco management, I've kind of had to do that cycle repeatedly. And so I knew at the end of that year, I could probably take a little bit of a hands-off approach, more overseer role, and just make sure that everyone's doing what they need to do. But it was establishing those core things before I started seeking people that I think helped create some good systems and create healthy volunteers. I hope that answers that question.
So you said you started with a mission statement, core values, and what else? In roles and responsibilities. So essentially kind of very clear guidelines of what's expected. Yeah. Week of, day of, during, and also what does the position require? I also established kind of a training guide. Not that I wrote it out necessarily, but my onboarding process for those volunteers can take anywhere between 3 to 6 months, which I know is very unusual for most people. But this sorted through people that weren't actually serious about it, especially younger volunteers. And it also gave them all the core disciplines, when we talk about gain structure and we talk about EQing and setup and stuff like that, it kind of all that stuff was out of the way by the time I was able to put them into a role. Yeah. Were you reading business management books? Do you read Good to Great? Because that sounds very much the multi-step process that Jim Collins would say. If you want to start a company, mission statement, core values, roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, I even from when I was at Costco, I was reading a lot of management type books. There's a lot of different conflict resolution books out there. There's a lot of psychological human resource management type material. Figuring out how people and what drives people is really important. I think when we're talking about leadership and we're talking about managing volunteers, and that helps you navigate difficult conversations, but also how you're going to dictate culture while you're there.
So, Blake, when we hosted the mix at Philo and we asked a lot of those questions around, like, what's your most difficult thing? And over, I heard some version of, recruiting volunteers or onboarding people, building a healthy, cohesive team. So, Mark...
everyone's just looking for that 24-hour volunteer. They're trying to get that unicorn.
Mark, how long did it take you to put together that whole, sort of onboarding document or process or whatever?
Oh man. Well, I think to a certain degree, from all the way from Costco, I had those ideas, those principles, whether they were fed into me from other people, from a ministry standpoint, or even from church leaders, getting the spiritual side and the personal side fit into that, right? And really, when I was getting hired for that position over the next 2 or 3 weeks before I actually came in and started my first day, I was creating documentation for those systems specific to the church, because I knew that when I got my feet on the ground, I was going to have to, it was going to be a big shift. It wasn't going to be one of those things where I could just kind of lead softly at the beginning and then do slow transitions. It was going to have to be something where I really just change the entire trajectory right away.
Mm-hmm. If you're asking me, and then I'll ask you as an actual smart person, if a church came to me and said, hey, we don't have any onboarding for our volunteers for production, we don't even know where to start, I would love to point them to a resource where here's a basic template. I feel like Church of the Highlands might have some of those. You might be able to point, just download it and then rewrite it for your church. Or I would say, go to ChatGPT, just dump stuff in from your church website, the mission of your church, the feel of it, and then tell it, please build me out a step-by-step training process for a brand new volunteer for audio system or video system, even listing out the specific gear you have. And it's amazing how fast it'll come up with something, and it'll be decent. And then you just sort of, change the content a bit to actually fit, but to actually get up and running without spending, 2 weeks trying to draft up this document, that can give you something that will work fast.
Mark, you might be able to tell that ChatGPT has turned into Toby's cocaine.
Yes.
That is truly what Toby wakes up and snorts every day. It's just more ChatGPT. If
you're not using ChatGPT or Grok, what are you even doing in life?
Exactly.
You got. I mean, I think the only way to be set up for success in this culture is to use these tools that we have at our disposal. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm using it every day.
Yeah. Do you know of any specific resources that you can download for step-by-step volunteer training onboarding setups?
I do have my website where I do have core values, mission statement, roles and responsibilities as PDF downloads that are free resources. It's on mcaudio.online. I do not have a specific onboarding process on there, and to be honest, maybe this is all the conversation I needed to get that. As something as a free resource for people.
Yeah.
But I think it's also one of those things, I kind of equate onboarding as kind of like the baptism in a church. Everyone works up to the baptism, and then once the baptism happens, what happens after that point? And what I mean is that a lot of times after we get them onboarded, what type of development and discipleship is happening? And a lot of times in most churches, there is no systems or culture to support whatever is written down, whatever documentation or culture is written down. And so I think it's really understanding that you can't just write these down and then give them to your volunteers to read and then expect the culture to shift. It's also ultimately something that you have to speak into them on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly level. And that's kind of probably where my Costco comes in into play. Is I'm used to having those daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly conversations. And that could be a multitude of things. That could be just, finding out prayer needs, kind of having one-on-ones with their, and finding out who they are and their personal life, the spiritual side, and then having weekly and monthly meetings with the group to understand what kind of issues you guys are facing, to create goals, and then yearly to kind of changed the trajectory of the entire team. So I didn't mean to get into a whole thing. So sorry.
No, I love it. Did you ever do any very specific videos for your church and your gear to train on? Because, again, like Drew has a lot of X32 training videos, and MXU obviously has their whole platform, but you might be using an X32 in a very specific way at your church, and a new volunteer, if you have these 3 or 4 videos, they can watch them in an hour, and then they'll be halfway there. And it's a very repeatable process.
I never did that personally. I honestly relied heavily on whatever console we were using. I gave them videos from whether it was Drew Brasher for X32 or it was Hurley. What's his first name? I can't
James.
think now. James Hurley.
Yeah.
On the X32, because they were teaching the principles. And to be honest, I felt like I'm willing to spend the time with them during the week hours to go over the console layout and understand kind of our approach with everything.
Yeah.
So I never did the video thing really. I always did it hands-on. I also have them shadowing me again for that 3 to 6 months. They're shadowing, and vice versa. I'm shadowing them at some point. So I never saw the need for it. I don't think it's necessarily wrong though. I've seen a lot of churches do it.
And what would you say, in your mind at least, is the minimum it's going to take to onboard somebody until they're, at least a base level ready to start using the equipment? So I think some churches think week 1, you're going to run audio for Easter Sunday, and then bad things happen. So, how long should they expect at a minimum to train people?
Man, everyone's so different. The level that they're technically at, the level that they're creatively at, or musically at, and the level that they're at on a relational level, right? How are they going to work with other team members? How are they going to work with the worship team? And so I think you have to really take into account each person's ability in all those different areas. And even, I would say, even the spiritual level. And I'm not trying to over spiritualize this conversation, but I think all those things ultimately dictate how long that journey is going to take for that person to develop. And I say this because there was one person on my team that was the most amazing volunteer. He would have volunteered 7 days a week if he had the opportunity to.
Did you clone yourself, Mark?
Yeah.
He was actually the same height as me, funny enough. So it was kind of weird. But it was really great. But he had no musical or creative ability, and his abilities on the relational level were very low. So he had a hard time multitasking, and so I had to figure out what his weaknesses were, and then what his strengths were. And so I was able to understand, okay, he's not going to be able to do well in a multitasking role, in a creative mixing role, right? But we have A2 positions at my church, and we have stage managers and stage ops and stuff like that, where he would be able to function very well. And so I was able to kind of do human resource management and kind of say, hey, this is a really good area where you would fit really well. I did training with him for 6 months, really trying to get him into a mixing role, and it just never took for him with his ear.
That's what we say about Toby as well. It was 6 years, didn't get anywhere.
Those sandals are just really throwing me off right now. I love it.
Only Christians wear sandals.
That's right.
But yeah, I think every person's a little bit different, and so I think you have to take that into account. That's why, I say 3 to 6 months, but if I have someone come in from another church at a very high level that has all those abilities and skills, maybe it's a month.
Yeah.
So.
If you're talking gear specifically, what are some of the things you think about for volunteer-friendly production setups versus not?
Oh gosh, I might get painted as a.
Yes, do it. Do it.
I find that Waves is a lot of times very difficult for volunteers, with or even third-party plugins for that matter.
Yeah.
So I try to stay away from that, depending on the team's level.
And are you talking Waves LV1 or the plugin packs?
Plugins.
Okay.
Yeah. Like a lot of times I've found with just going to so many churches, if they're already having a hard time with gain structure and getting the console itself to sound good, they probably don't need to add 10 layers of complexity.
Yeah.
And so I tend to stray away. Now, here's the thing, as I think I've done this many times where there's a process of like, we got this good, they understand all the core elements, and so now we're going to add waves on.
Yeah.
So it's not to say waves is necessarily bad. It's just, it's one of those things people are just like, oh, waves, let's get it, and then they burn trying to use that. So I think, man, I mean, gear's gear at the end of the day. So it's one of those things. I think getting the right gear for the right job is important. But
Yeah.
And if you need that right gear at the right job, go to churchgear.com.
Exactly. We have a lot of volunteer-friendly gear.
plug.
Yeah. And some Waves gear, too. We still love Waves.
He said plugs, right?
I
Like
know.
plugins.
Exactly.
Plugs. Exactly.
But it is funny, like you are right. Waves can add a massive level of complexity to a system. But then also, if you have an incredible mix engineer, he's like, bring it on, because then I have the absolute best toys. It's just, you know, the amount of churches I've walked into and they're describing their system and it's so complex and just strange how it's set up. And I asked, well, why did you do it that way? And they said,
That's what the other guy wanted.
That's what the last guy set up. And we don't know why he did it that way. So yes, I think there are, you know, consistent, repeatable principles that every church should apply if you have volunteers at any level, so it doesn't get out of hand. So easy.
I think that's why
Blake can do it.
documentation really matters.
Yeah.
You know, documentation of all your systems, workflows, so that if you do leave or you pass away, whatever the situation is, we've had that happen on our team. It's like that next person who's going to lead the department knows, or the other people know how to troubleshoot and figure things out. I think that's really critical. If you're going to be a good leader, you need to do that. You need to almost have the mentality of working yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
Love that.
I have a new proposition. Anytime a new system is getting installed, you make that tech director sign they're going to be there for 5 years if it goes past a certain level of complexity. Because how many times have we heard this story?
Yeah.
Like, what's up with dudes making it super complex and then deucing out?
Yeah.
Like, this just keeps happening.
Yeah. And Blake, speaking of deucing out, you doing okay over there, buddy? I know that, lunch was about an hour ago and you have a predisposed cycle of your body to...
I'm trying to prep my mind, body, and soul for baffling Blake. You know, I've got to really...
Well, you said it. Let's do it. It's time to baffle Blake.
If I didn't love HouseRight so much, I would not consent to this torture game.
Yes. Baffle Blake brought to you by our friends at HouseRight. All right, Blake, it is time to baffle you again.
Isn't that just the whole podcast, Toby?
That usually is, but specifically, we're partnering with our friends at HouseRight to baffle you in this new segment we like to refer to as Baffling Blake. So HouseRight is an amazing integration team that works with almost exclusively churches all over the country to partner with their architects in pre-building phase or current room renovations, where they help make sure that your space looks aesthetically pleasing, but also acoustically correct for the style of worship that your church is trying to achieve.
You said the word architect, and I just haven't heard anything since. I'm like, that sounds way too technical. That's above my pay grade, but it's not above HouseRight's pay grade.
No, it should be above all our pay grades, but HouseRight does this all the time, and they're amazing at it. And if you are not specifically looking for an integration project, but you're like, hey, I am looking for my next career or opportunity, HouseRight is also hiring amazing people to join their team.
They're hiring.
They are hiring. So if you have been looking at the map and looking at Lexington, Kentucky very lovingly because of horse racing and bourbon and HouseRight.
And high-proof bourbon at that.
Yes. Go to HouseRight.com, check out their opportunities, and start a conversation today.
And they are looking to do some new hires. They got multiple roles. I'm going to join one of them so I can get away from Toby. So
As
go
you should.
hit them up at HouseRight.com. And if you're looking for your next integration project, they come highly recommended by us.
They sure do, as well as dozens and dozens of great churches they've worked with.
I mean, probably even hundreds at this point.
I'm sure.
So go check them out.
All right. All right, Mark, you are going to play against Blake in this game of Baffle Blake. And so I'm going to give a scenario.
I didn't sign up for this.
You
join this
agreed to the
podcast.
calendar invite. You know, once you click confirm on the calendar invite, you're in.
It should have terms and conditions when we send it.
Warnings, side effects, and always diarrhea is one of the side effects, just without fail.
It's not might be, it's always. What is this, Taco Bell?
Oh, God.
Yeah. Do not take the ChurchGear podcast if you are allergic to the ChurchGear podcast. All right, sorry. So I'm going to give you a scenario, and you guys have to decide, is this real or is this fake? Okay, did this actually happen in a church or is this made up?
Well, it's all fake because you just ChatGPT'd it.
You don't know that. All right. Number one, during baptisms, a volunteer forgot to heat the water. It was 47 degrees and 3 people screamed, "Jesus!" as they hit the water. Is that real, Mark? What do you say?
I'm going to say it's fake.
Are we doing 5 of these?
Yep.
Yeah, the 3 people are not going to take the Lord's name in vain like that. I do have a story at New Vision where
you don't get to do stories during Baffle Blake.
Big dude goes into the tub, slips, and lets out an explicit word. I'm going to also say false.
That is false, so you both get a point. And Blake, you know that big dude was you. Come on. That's why you had to get baptized twice.
Toby, I didn't say XXL.
Twice. All right. Next up, a parking team volunteer wore a dinosaur costume for fun and scared off a visiting family who thought it was a Halloween event. Mark, what do you say?
Wait, how many of these things are supposed to be false? There's one true?
No, they could all be any or the other. There's 5 of them total.
Oh gosh. I'm going to say false.
Okay, Blake?
I'm going to say true.
That one was false. All right, Mark is up by a point.
I guess how would you even know that had happened? Because they flee.
I know.
I should have known that was false.
All right, next up. One volunteer served decaf-only coffee by mistake for 2 months. The worship leader kept wondering why the congregation seemed so low energy. Mark, what do you say?
I feel like I've been trending on this false train, so I feel like I need to keep that going. So false.
I'm going to stick with him here. I'm going to say false.
All right, neither of you get a point. That's true.
Oh my God.
Son of a...
I know. That poor worship leader was desperately trying to get the crowd to engage, and they didn't have any caffeine, and they didn't know it. All right, next up. A camera volunteer accidentally live streamed their own face for 6 minutes because they thought the camera was off and started eating goldfish crackers.
That's so specific. True.
True? All right.
I'm going to say false.
Mark gets another point.
No, he's already won now. It's 2-0.
2-0. All right, we'll make this one worth 47 points, but Mark gets them all. Last up, during a youth lock-in, a volunteer fell asleep while chaperoning and woke up with no eyebrows. Blake, I'll let you go for this time.
I guess I'll say false.
Okay, Mark, what say you?
I'll go true just to be different.
Yeah. Oh, that's 100% true. You know that has to have happened hundreds of times.
I'm very afraid for my eyebrows now.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think middle school and high school kids, what kind of nonsense they get up to in the middle of the night?
I'll tell you, they fart so much. But you could knock a person out. His eyebrows probably got blown off his head when he walked into the room between all the farts, body odor, and shoe smell. I mean, it is truly rancid. It's like a raccoon died on the surface of the sun with a dumpster pail.
I feel so bad for our friends at HouseRight who have sponsored this segment, and then they end with that. But you know who won't shave your eyebrows is our friends at HouseRight.
And you know who smells incredible is our friends at HouseRight.
So again, HouseRight, incredible integrator. They work with churches all over the country. They do amazing work, and they're also hiring for several great positions. We love those guys. Go check them out at HouseRight.com and start the conversation.
Yeah, especially if your job right now feels like a dumpster fire.
Much like yours does, Blake. All right, back to the expert on this podcast here, Mark. You do a lot of...
too far with that.
Okay.
With that verbiage here.
Smart-ish. So you consult for a lot of churches. What are some of the most common issues that you're seeing just over and over again that you're like, oh, here we go again. I know how to help you with this.
So you guys gave me the questions beforehand, and I had a hard time trying to figure out what issues I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
Because I knew we had only so much time. So I was going to bring up 3 core ones that I thought were probably the biggest ones that I think are issues. The first, which I kind of already spoke to this a little bit, but the first is unhealthy systems and culture without development or boundaries. So volunteers burn out. It's hurting the production quality. And then secondly, churches taking shortcuts on their building project, renovation, the production, whatever have you, and ultimately it's taking all these either shortcuts or it's also compromises because of aesthetic reasons, and then they realize then they ask a question like why their production or why they're having so many issues later on, or why they're having to spend so much money 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. And it's like, well, if you had just done it right the first time, what's that term? Cry once, and just have it done right the first time.
I think you're looking for measure twice, cut once.
And no,
is that what it is?
That is a saying, but that's not what he's going for.
I've never heard this saying.
Yeah,
if I haven't heard it, it's not true.
Yeah, it's essentially like it's going to be more painful in the front end, but then later on down the road you will enjoy the result of it.
Is this like the spanking you get when your parents like it's going to hurt me more than it hurts you?
Kind of.
I just haven't heard this phrase.
You're closer. Yeah. Maybe we should just ask chat what it is, because that's how we go.
All right, y'all keep talking. I'll ask.
Yeah, please. I'd like to see what it comes out with. We were just talking about spankings.
Good thing you're not on a church staff anymore.
The third is a lot of churches, and funny enough, Spencer from MXU was in a video this morning talking about this very thing, but that a lot of churches will be like, all right, we're going to spend as much money as we need to get the right gear. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that they haven't invested any of that money into their culture, into their volunteers, into development, discipleship, into training. And so it's like the team is like falling apart. Meanwhile, they have like the newest gear.
Yeah.
Okay, I looked it up. ChatGPT said it's buy once, cry once. Or
that's the term I was looking for.
A more general way is measure twice, cut once. So freaking airball. Got it.
Right.
But we're not going for general. We're going for technical.
You also have trained Chat for your own nonsense.
Toby, if Chat can be trained, then ChatGPT at this point is just like, all right, let me give Toby fart jokes every time he sends me content.
And do you not think your phone is listening to you and then, placating to your craziness?
You think my phone cares about placating me? It manipulates me.
Mark, I want to hone back in. I love all three of those things. I think those are absolutely true and they're happening a lot. I want to hone in on the second one, some of the shortcuts that churches are making. So I like to think that, an integrator puts together a great design and then the church says, okay, let's go with that. Oh no, we need to cut here, 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 and here. And then they end up with a system that is not going to meet their needs. What are some of those very specific ways in which they cut that you're like, oh man, they did it again?
Yeah, man, there's so many, but I'll start with they don't even go with an integrator to begin with. Don't get with an integrator when they're making the plans for the building. They do it afterwards, which is huge compromises.
Yeah.
But it saves a lot of money, right? Not having to think about production until afterwards, and then just have your volunteers come up with a solution. When churches are working with integration companies and they are making those cuts, a lot of times I see acoustic treatment fall off as the first thing, and that's probably honestly the most important thing to sound quality in a church or
we've heard this before.
Production.
Yeah.
It dictates a huge percentage of your audio quality. So making a compromise there is huge. I was just at a church in Ohio where the integrator did like LA2X amps for their L acoustic system instead of LA4Xs. And they put LA4Xs on the subs and on the front fills. So there were some huge, weird compromises to get the system put in at this high-end system.
Yeah.
And there's huge compromises in getting the right amps for it to meet the budget. So there's things like that. I would say there's things like you think about power, having enough power for future expansion, LED walls, stuff that you never thought might be there. A lot of times that's the first things to come off an integrator's design.
Mark, question for you. You said not using an integrator. So like a lot of times, when people are buying gear from us, it's like, oh, we had this one piece of rack gear go out. Like, let's just replace that with church gear. what is the scale or price tag that should be triggered that says, oh, we need an integrator? Is it X amount of dollars? Is it X amount of gear? Like when is the tipping point?
I don't think there's necessarily a budget point that you need to flip over to an integrator necessarily. I mean, I never thought about it like that, at least. Because I've worked in home missions churches all the way to, large scale churches of seating 5,000 plus. So I would say you don't necessarily have to. It's more about the vision of the leadership team on what quality level they want to bring into that church. I would say, especially in a world where everything keeps increasing as far as production quality and quantity of audio channels on your console, it's not going down, it's going up, if anything. And so I think that, any churches that have, over 100 people in their audience probably need to be using some type of integration company to do things the right way. But it's also finding the right integration company that's going to meet the needs of that specific church too, because you can find Joe Blow down the street and he has a storefront or whatever, and I run into it all the time. And honestly, me and my friend Vito were saying this the other day. I'm almost basically a reintegrator. Most of the time I'm doing stuff, I'm reintegrating their entire systems that a previous integrator already did.
Yeah.
So that's my new title, is reintegrator.
It's a new job opportunity.
We need to make the Kelly Blue Book of integrators, Toby. I'm telling you.
Oh, it's on our list, our to-do list. Like,
wait, what's that?
Legit. Kelly Blue Book again is the wrong way to say
Kelly
things.
Blue Book?
Kelly Blue Book.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
That's not weird, but just like a reference manual for here's a list of a lot of great integrators. Not,
That's a great idea.
It's not complete. It's not opinionated. It's just, here is a list. And
well, in a perfect world, it'd be like, I live in this location, I have this budget range, I have this scale, blah, 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 blah. And it'd be like, HouseRight every time. But just kidding.
If that just keeps popping up the whole time.
Truly, though, if we made that, everybody would come to our site, Toby.
So obviously, if you hire Joe Blow and he does it all wrong, it will end up in a disaster. Blake, how'd you like that segue there? That's pretty good.
It is a great disaster, Toby. So, Mark, tell us a moment when you're doing something in church production where everything went wrong. You've already told us your 24-hour story, so you'll have to one-up yourself, but just everything went wrong. How did you fix it? And did you save it just in time, like the Clark Kent that you look like, or did you have the disaster fully played out? How'd you address it with leadership afterwards? How did it go? What happened?
Yeah, I got a good one for you guys. You're going to love this. I was on a tour and was running Waves. So, putting that in the equation.
Waves.
Yeah. And shout out, plug for Waves. And I was like, well, I'm going to use this new plugin on main keys. Because, I forgot which one it was, but I put it on there before I did the show and kind of forgot about it. And we get to rehearsal after our load in, and the keyboard is cutting out really randomly. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, it was our Nord that we traveled with. So we try to figure out what the church has, and we swap over to their Casio. And that had the same problem. But it was we're talking a couple minutes before show start, and we're like, what do we do? And I look at my Waves plugin that I just added that previous week, and there's a gate on it because I loaded a piano preset, but it was for an acoustic piano, and whatever person did that file put a gate on it. I had no idea. So I think that speaks to, trying everything out before you do it. But it was that, and we did not have time to switch back to the Nord. So we ran with the Casio for half the show before switching back. I think, I think this is a great segment, kind of talking about leadership and talking through post disaster, what that looked like.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I've been around leaders and management throughout my entire life that have given me grace. But I would say I think they've given me that grace because I owned up to every single mistake that I made. So it wasn't like, oh, it was this piece of gear or it was this. It was like, hey, it was me. I'm so sorry. If it was something external, obviously I would let them know, but I would apologize on behalf of that and be like, listen, I have a plan in place. So I was giving very clear, distinctive language as far as what post this disaster is going to look like so that this never happens again. And I've always been in an environment where I've had the grace and the understanding from them. And to be honest, if it was gear related or even going back to Costco days where there was an actual system, I was talking with the upper echelon of leadership to figure out a solution for this so that this would not happen across all of our areas. But that same thing has transcended to all the churches that I've gone to. If there's a problem with actual gear, and I let them know, they have that trust with me to be like, okay, this is it. Or if I do make a mistake, which happens all the time, I'm not perfect. I know you guys thought I was. But when I do make those mistakes, they have the understanding that I'm going to be harder on myself than anybody, and I'm not going to make that same mistake twice.
I love that, using failure as an opportunity to teach and grow. I think is a wonderful thing. I mean, I do it to Blake all the time. And Blake, for reference on this story, like the Nord, it's like they brought Toby to the gig, but then something wasn't working, so they had to go with Blake, the Casio. So just for reference for you.
That's such an upgrade for them. Mark, speaking of upgrades, if you were going to upgrade everybody that's listening and give them a great tech takeaway, what would you say to a room full of production people to make their Sundays or their gigs, their live events better?
Wow, that's so open-ended. I don't know if I was ready for this one, but what I would say is I would say on the personal and the spiritual, to create healthy systems for yourself, for your family, to grow and develop. But on the technical side, I would say as long as you're passionate and you are getting in touch with other professionals and keep growing, always being a student, those are going to be things that continue throughout your entire life. One of the greatest things, and I'll lean on to this, is always being a student. You see guys that are double my age still mixing, and I think the reason why they're still mixing is because they're always learning, especially in an environment where production gear and stuff is constantly changing. I think it's really critical.
Well, double your age, Mark, is like 14, so that's a good answer.
Gosh.
Toby, you could learn something from that. Be a student. You always call yourself the master all the time, but maybe call yourself a student next time.
No, I don't call myself the master. That's what everybody else calls me. I just accept it.
Master Toby.
Yeah, my wife is just rolling her eyes somewhere right now.
There.
Yeah,
I thought you were about to say something way worse. Okay.
and also, I just wanted to make this joke the whole episode, but it's like, with his Costco background, he is giving us church production wisdom in bulk.
My gosh.
I know.
Wow.
It's a dad joke.
Toby, you should have worked it.
It was a corny dad joke, but
Yeah.
it was good.
Yeah, thank you.
I never thought of it like that.
Timing was terrible. You should
just
have
have-
worked it into the episode.
I have too much wisdom that I just got to pick and choose. I bring my wisdom in
A-host.
bulk.
It's an A-host thing. I'm going to get you a shirt that says that.
Yes.
All right. Well, Mark, do you have anything you want to plug? Anywhere you want to point people towards?
Oh gosh. Well, if you guys are looking for someone to work with your team, do clinics with your production and worship teams to develop them and create systems, I'd be happy to do that. So I'm plugging myself a little bit. I also, kind of act as a liaison with integration companies to help get the integrator to meet the needs of your church. On top of that, I do have free resources on my website, mcaudio.online. I know there's a lot of great resources out there. So my stuff is not the only stuff, but I got stuff on there. So
Yep, he's got stuff. So mcaudio.online.
correct. Yeah, I got some like PDF downloads that kind of really help some teams. Especially like in-ear mixing for vocalists and band members. I just recently put those on there. Just kind of giving you guys giving people a good foundation and a good start for workflow and understanding what they need and what they don't.
Love it.
Nice. Well, Mark, we appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's a great honor to be on this. Way back when, I got to use ChurchGear for some of the needs at my church, and so this is a really cool full circle moment. I think I used ChurchGear for some trade-ins or whatever. I don't know what 6 years
don't say
ago.
the trade-in word. Don't say the trade-in word. Our accountant in California just shaking in his boots right now. We can't do those anymore.
We can buy your gear, and then you can buy gear from us. It's
you know how
just
stupid I feel when people ask us on Instagram. They're like, "Can you do trade-ins?" I'm like, "We can't do a trade-in, but you can sell it to us."
I mean,
and then we can credit you.
It works differently.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's the same thing.
Accounting is stupid.
Yeah.
What they're saying, not trade-ins, for all the people that are going to take that verbiage, it's not a trade-in. You're going to get a credit. And
Yeah.
that's clarity for you.
Clarity's kindness. Well, thank you for joining us, Mark.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the ChurchGear Studios.
All right, Blake, so we have the full circle moment of coming on the ChurchGear podcast. I mean, if he even goes further back in his history, can he get on the Costco podcast? Is that even a thing?
There's not a Costco podcast, but you get a good deal at Costco. And you know what? You also get a good deal is Wave plugins. And our buddy Ivan only buys them when they're on sale.
You mean Yvonne?
Yvonne. And I think we said Waves so many times. I think Yvonne right now, he's got chills running down his arms.
He's just waiting for the next sale. And I also think we should start the Costco podcast if there's not already one.
And we could film it in Costco.
Yes.
And we could put Waves plugins on sale.
Yes.
And then Yvonne can say, I'm going to Costco to listen to ChurchGear's podcast.
In bulk.
In bulk. So you should send this episode in bulk to your entire friends list.
Yeah. And now I'm wondering what other famous brands out there doesn't have a podcast that we should start?